Hi, you guys. Welcome back to Meaningful Motivations with Tracy Erickson. And of course, if you are new to this channel, welcome. My name is Tracy Erickson, and in this video, I'm going to talk about the symbolic meaning of a gray feather. So stay tuned. Just the other day, I was sitting peacefully on my deck in the backyard, reading a book, when I suddenly saw something come down from the sky out of the corner of my eye. It startled me a little bit at first, but when I looked, I noticed it was a very small gray feather. So, of course, I gathered the feather and I ended up taping it into my journal, as you can see. It got a little messy when I taped it in there, but the feather itself was kind of like lighter on the bottom and it transitioned into a darker gray on the top of the feather. And so, since it's such a small feather, it's very small, as you can see, I realized that I don't really know what kind of bird this feather came from. And so I decided to interpret the meaning, the spiritual meaning of finding this feather based on simply the fact that it's a feather and it's the color gray. In my life, I have found that if you can interpret symbols that come into your life experience suddenly and unexpectedly, like this feather did, then you can actually interpret that as a message from spirit. So it could actually be like an angel message, which is a message from God, or it could be a message from your own spirit guides, or even your higher self. So normally I may take a feather that I found if I can easily identify what type of bird it came from, like I have in the past. But again, in this case, the feather is so small that I'm just going to show you how to interpret a message from simply the object itself and the color of the object. When you receive a spirit message like a feather or something like that, that just drops into your life, similar to how I was just sitting there and the feather fell from the sky, then take that as a message, right, from spirit. But you also want to kind of reflect on where was your mind when this symbol came into your life. What have you been focusing on? What have you been thinking about lately? Have you had some big question on your mind? Because if so, the symbolic meaning of a spirit message could help you to guide you to the correct answer that you'll be looking for. So when I found the feather and taped it into my journal, I made some notes on what I think it could mean to find a gray feather specifically. So I wrote that it could mean it's a transition, so a time of change, because the feather that I found was fading from light gray to dark gray on the top of the feather. I also wrote that gray feathers could represent some kind of choice that you have to make. Or it could also represent being stuck in the middle, because gray is a mixture of black and white. We also use the color gray in some of our phrases, like when we say it's a gray area. So in that sense, it could mean that you're stuck or that you have a choice that needs to be made. A lot of times when we're stuck, it is because we don't know which way to go in some kind of choice, right? I also wrote that if times are tough at the time, the gray feather could mean that calmer times are coming. Because again, with gray, it's not just black or white. And, it's not dull or bold. It's just gray. It's a gray area. So again, the color gray on the feather could definitely mean that if you've been going through trouble, it's possible that you will find peace and calmness very soon. And a gray feather can indicate the need for taking a stand in a situation. Like I said, if you're stuck in the gray, you may need to choose black or white. So you might need to choose, am I going left or am I going right? Which decision do I need to make? So it's also a sign to find the gray area in a situation. So if you put yourself in the other person's shoes, if you have like some kind of situation going on with other people, for instance, you may take this gray feather as a sign from spirit saying that you need to find the gray area. Stop being so black or white in a certain situation and have a little compassion for the other person by putting yourself in their shoes. So after I, made some initial thoughts about the gray feather, I always like to take it a little bit further as well. So after kind of recording my initial thoughts about finding a gray feather, I decided to turn to Taschen's Book of Symbols so that I can get a full view of the two symbols that we have here, the feather and the color gray. So let's start by seeing what this book has to say about feathers as a symbol. So many of the qualities we associate with birds are distilled in the image of a single feather. Lightness, mobility, air, wingedness, balance, flight, and joy. Part of the magic of feathers is that, unique to birds, the most heavenly of creatures, they are thought to have evolved from the scales of primordial reptiles, attesting to the unity of heaven and earth. We now know that there were feathered dinosaurs that likely originated flight, just as mythically the Mayan feathered serpent god Quetzalcoatl combines the numinous elements of bird and snake. Everywhere in the world, feathers were also believed to be endowed with magical powers, which accrued to the individual who wore ritual dress or used implements adorned with feathers. Feathers have decorated medicine bundles, ceremonial rattles, drums and staffs, war bonnets, helmets, and crowns. Representing the altered states of consciousness described as ecstatic flight between earth and the spirit world, feathers covered the shamanic cap or robe. Sticks decorated with feathers were ritually employed by Indians to carry prayers aloft, and by the Maori to transport the soul of a deceased chief to the realm of the gods. Hindu apsaras, or flying genies, and Christian angels have wings of brilliant feathers, allowing them to be swift celestial messengers. In ancient Egypt, the ostrich feather was the hieroglyph for Mat, goddess of right order. In later dynastic times, it was thought that the heart of the deceased was weighed against the feather of Mat. Depending on the result, the dead entered the land of the blessed or was swallowed into the void, suggesting that the heart of one who had lived life in balance should be, at the end, light as a feather. Feathers are sensitive to the slightest wind and thus are emblems of psychics' capacity to pick up invisible and imperceptible currents. If we take note of these and follow up on them, as happens in some fairy tales, we can be shown new possibilities or discover where psychic energy is tending. Thoughts, intuitions, imagination are often depicted as feathers that are caught up and carried on the breath of inspiration. Feathers form the wings with which one can transcend the concrete, escape confinement, and soar to creative heights or spiritual vision. And now let's see what the book has to say about the color gray as a symbol. Gray is a mixture of black and white, but also, as anyone with a watercolor paint box knows, it results from mixing any of the color opposites: green and red, yellow and violet, blue and orange. Because of this, it has a peculiar position at the center of the color world. Despite the attraction of the vivid primary colors, gray is essential. That fundamental gray which distinguishes the masters and is the soul of all color, wrote the painter Redon. Gray is present to some degree in almost all colors, and this common note ties together in harmony the various hues in a painting. Human newborns do not, as we once thought, see only gray. Though they are not able to focus as well as adults so that objects are fuzzy, their eyes possess color vision. As we develop, gray, neither bright nor bold, takes on particular meanings. Probably by association with graying hair, gray stands for old age and all that is associated with it: retrospection, inaction, narrowing of the libido, but also wisdom and serenity. In Christian symbolism, it is the color of mourning, of the ascetic time of Lent, of humility, and of resurrection of the dead. Medieval paintings show Christ in a gray cloak at the Last Judgment. Gray evokes Saturnine lead and the moods that leadenness conveys: sadness, inertia, melancholy, indifference, or boredom. Gray is linked with the sackcloth and ashes of penitence, and with the symbolism of ashes in general. Despite the association of ashes with defeat and failure, however, in alchemy, ashes symbolize the immortal part of the personality that has survived the confrontation with primitive desires and emerged purified. Gray is neutral, an in-between place. Opposites balance there or are yet undifferentiated. Mythically, dead persons and spirits moving between the realms are gray. A gray area is not certain, one way or the other. There is indefiniteness about gray, embodied especially in gray clouds and fog, which adds to its ambiguity and its place as mediator. The varying usages of gray as a symbol suggest that it has different meanings depending on one's temperament. To the outward-directed personality, which seeks excitement and stimulation, gray stands for all that is burdensome and limiting. In an 1899 speech, Theodore Roosevelt proclaimed, "Far better it is to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to take the rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy much nor suffer much, because they live in the gray twilight that knows not victory nor defeat." By contrast, the American poet Paul Ingle, writing of his experience as a student at England's Oxford University, remembered that the tense American nerve relaxed. I lived with a gray quietness that let the mind grow inward like a root. Interpreting messages from spirit is a lot like interpreting your dreams. So you can take any person, place, or thing and consider that a symbol or something that is speaking to you through an image. So as you look at these people, places, and things in your life or in your dreams, you can still interpret those as a message from spirit based on what that symbol means to you or what it means to humanity as a whole. It takes reasoning to accomplish this. So what you would do is take your symbol the person, place, or thing that you want to interpret. And you can look at it in terms of its form and function, like we did by reading the Book of Symbols. The feather's form and function is to help the bird to fly through the sky and to navigate through the winds of change, right? So you can take that information, what we know of the feather, and apply it to your spirit message. And again, we can take the color gray as another symbol and look at that in terms of, first of all, how you create gray from black and white or the colors and their opposites and mixing them together. And you can kind of pull messages simply by using your own reasoning even. But if you are into interpreting messages from spirit, or if you're into dream interpretation, Taschen's The Book of Symbols is a highly recommended book by me because I am constantly referencing this book, not only just for fun and reading random passages out of this book whenever I feel the need, but I'm constantly referencing this when it comes to interpreting messages from spirit, as well as my very own dreams. So if you don't have this book, I recommend adding it to your collection. Well, that about wraps it up for this video. So if you like this video, be sure to click that like button and share this video with all your friends out there. And of course, if you're a viewer but not yet a subscriber, I would love for you to click subscribe down below. And once you have subscribed, you can turn on the notifications bell if you would like to be notified each and every time I upload a new video. Thank you guys so much for watching and spending your time with me. I love you. And I'll see you next time. Bye.